Hey everybody, welcome to Chin Fat. I am currently stuck down into my dingy, dirty basement to be doing these tutorials. House arrest, what can I say? And also, don't mention that I have a bandage on my head right there. I know that I have a bandage on my head. Why would I not know I have a band-aid on my head? And with that, let's get started. In this couple episodes I am going over a new camera that I've been working on. And that new camera it's relatively new. This is the Panasonic Lumix S5 IIX. It's got like a mouthful when you try to say that name. Yeah, S5 IIX is the name of that, and it's a Lumix line here. This is Panasonic's newer full-frame camera, and the kind of shocking thing about this is that it's around $2,500 just for the body, which is, in my opinion, very affordable for what it does. This has a full-frame sensor. If you open up the cap there and look at the sensor, it is a full-frame sensor. It's a big, large sensor like you would see in one of those Canon, I remember the Canon 5D Mark IIs and Mark IIIs. Those had the big full frame, but the issue with those, when you shot video on them though, it cropped into the middle of that full frame sensor and shot a Super 35 image out of that sensor when you did video. You could do still images that were full frame that took advantage of the full frame sensor, but the video cropped in on it. And the cool thing about this is it shoots in 6K and it uses the entire sensor when you shoot video. Depending on what the aspect ratio is, if you shoot like this, I think it's like a 3:2 aspect ratio, it will shoot the entire sensor. It's like this big square image the circle of light that come through these lenses hit that sensor and pretty much use the entire sensor rather than cropping, which gives you, if you're shooting on something that's going to be projected on a huge screen, that's nice. The extra image sensor size gives you a lot more clarity and image quality compared to using the Super 35 image space. So basically, I'm going to be going over all the kind of parts and accessories you can purchase for the camera to make kind of this full-on kind of cinema camera setup. You can just use the camera and pop a lens on, pop a battery in it, and start recording if you want to. But if you're going to go kind of full cinema setup, I'm going to show you some accessories that I've got for this camera here. The line of lenses that you got to buy for this have to fit over a full frame. So you do have to specifically get full frame lenses for that camera to record over the entire image sensor. And these are a nice line of primes here. These Meike primes that are full frame. These are Leica mount or L mount. And these lenses are also, like I mentioned, full frame. It makes a big circle of light large enough to fit across that entire sensor here. And I've got a set of 6 primes here that go basically from 16 all the way up to 135 here. So with that, we'll get started on the build here. What I've got here, first of all, is a kind of nice medium-sized tripod. This head here is the Manfrotto 504 HD, which is a little bit larger head than just like these little teeny tripods that you can put these smaller mirrorless cameras on. Even though this is a mirrorless camera, we're going to be bulking it up a bit with some accessories here to make it kind of a cinema rig here. So, but first of all, with Manfrotto, you've got a speed plate, a dovetail on the top here. I'm going to loosen the slide plate. I'm going to pull this off here. And you've got this plate here. I've added an extra 1/4-inch screw in this. This is a 1/4-inch 20-thread screw here that will fit into these speed plates here. But I put 2 because when you put this camera on, I like it so the camera can't rotate if it gets loose. And with 2 screws, that'll help hold it straight. So anyway, so the first thing that you got to do is, if you're going to be getting a cage like this is the Tilta Cage that is built for the S5 Mark II. That fits the camera perfectly, that slides it into place. We'll go over some of the accessories on this as well. But for that plate, you'll need to get a Tilta. This is a speed plate here, or dovetail plate, that basically connects to your Manfrotto speed plate. So I've got my Manfrotto speed plate here, and I've got the dovetail. I'm going to turn this dovetail around this way with the Manfrotto. You got that little pin right there. They even say on the inside which direction is the lens. The lens goes that way. And I'm going to put the dovetail on this direction with this little safety release on the back. I like loading my camera on the back of the plate rather than from the front of the plate. It just really depends on the camera that you're using, the size of the camera, and your preference. But I like to load this from the back. So I'm going to face the lens this way. I'm going to put the speed plate on this way. And what you're going to do is you're going to get these dovetails. So they're basically pointing down toward each other. You got the little dovetail where they kind of go inwards toward each other like that. So once again, the little released safety pin has to be on the top. So I'm going to install that. I like to just line up these plates here and find a couple quartering screws, kind of get this somewhere in the middle of the plate so it's kind of centered, and then I will hand tighten these initially. Okay, hand tightened there, and I've got the 2 screws in there, and I've got kind of that formation where these dovetails kind of go inwards toward each other like that. So now I'm going to take a screwdriver, gonna snug those things up just a little bit there. You don't have to like monster tighten these, but you want them fairly snug so it won't loosen and your camera doesn't fall. I'm going to slide on the Manfrotto dovetail here on the bottom, click it into place, and now we have this quick install plate for our camera to slide onto that. I'm going to lock the slide here so this will no longer slide back and forth. And by the way, the Manfrotto has a safety release mechanism here on the side. So if you need to get that off, you hold that down and take it off. And then when you put it back on, just click it into place, and now the safety is re-engaged. So lock the slide. Now I'm going to grab the camera. I'm not showing how to install the camera. There are some tutorials on that, and Tilta has some instructions on how to install they're fairly they're fairly intuitive how to get these installed, but I'm really going more over the accessories and what I do to create this camera build here. So I'm going to get this right onto this plate here on the back, because remember the safety is where the safety release mechanism is where you install that. So I'm going to slide it from the back like that until I can hear it click. I can hear that little click back here, and now I can do the slide lock here. But see, and that keeps it from sliding off, and there's a little screw on the front that keeps it from sliding off the front. So I'm just going to lock that now, and there we go. Okay, now the camera's on. It's not sliding anymore, and it is on the dovetail, on the Tilta dovetail. Okay, let's put rods on next. So I have here with this, if you buy this kit, these cages usually come with 15 millimeter. These ones are 12-inch 15 millimeter rods, and I'm going to install these both, slide them in. So we've got 2 rods, so we can accessorize this camera. I'm going to put it maybe just kind of somewhere in the middle, and then I'm going to tighten these screws on the side. This one here, for some reason, I haven't had this much with Tilta, but the Tilta hits into that little lock, the slide lock there. So you just kind of have to pull this out. You can pull this out here and rotate it, and it won't tighten it or loosen it. It releases it off the tightening mechanism. Or I can even just move this slide lock here, just loosen it up for a minute, just long enough to tighten that. Tighten the rod into place. There you go. Now I can lock the slide again. And let me tighten the other side there as well. So tighten that side, and now my rods aren't sliding. They're held in place. Okay, so next we're going to put on a lens here. So I'm going to grab one of our full frame lenses here. And what you usually want to do is get your lens ready. You don't want to take your sensor cap off and leave it off for too long, or dust can kind of settle in there and you get gunk on your sensor, and that stuff shows up, and then you really can't fix that. So I usually, before I do this, I usually open up my sensor cap here, and I will shine a flashlight inside and just look at it and make sure that there's no spots or dust. And if there is, you don't use a cloth. You don't go in there and brush it off. You have to use don't use compressed air either. That can it's like when you spray it, sometimes if you spray it too long, it gets that freezing stuff that comes out and freezes, and it can ruin your sensor there, put permanent stains on it. So what you can do with those little puff air things, or you can get these little brushes for the sensor, you can kind of brush it off. You can even get sensor squeegees and clean that off too, which I do on occasion when it gets really bad. But I've got my sensor off, and Leica lenses, L-mount lenses, it's weird. The cap screws left to tighten and right to loosen. But when you put it on, you would think it would be like a Nikon lens where you rotate left to click, but no. When you put it on the actual camera, it rotates right to click and then left to loosen. So, but the cap itself is a righty loosen and lefty tighten, which is weird. But I'm going to find a little spot on the lens here. Right here, this little red dot right there is what you're going to line up. There's a little red dot on the lens right there that you use to line this up. And I'm going to find this little notch right there. There's a little notch poking out on the Leica, on the L mount, and you line that red dot up with that little dot, and it should go flush. And once I can see my lens is flush now, I rotate right until it clicks, and now it is locked into place there. All right, first accessory I'm going to install is, first of all, these are pretty heavy lenses. They're pretty, if you pick these Leica lenses up there, they're pretty hefty, got a lot of glass in them. So I want to put a little lens mount on it. I just want to lift this up just ever so, just teeny bit, just to relieve the tension off of the mount so it doesn't ruin the mount. Because over time it can do that. So SmallRig makes these here, these little lens supports. that you can put onto these 15mm rods here. It's got 2 slots for the 15mm rods on this here. And I'm going to slide this onto here and get it so it's just underneath the lens where there's no gears, that nothing's going to catch on it when it rotates your focus. And I'm going to lock it like right there is perfect. And that's going to go right here on the lens before it hits the gear. And now I'm going to lift this support up, and you're just going to barely push this up till you just barely see it budge, just a teeny bit like that. Just very subtle, and that has relieved the tension. You don't want to push it up too hard, or it's going to be forcing the lens to not fit flush there, and that can also ruin it. So I just barely see it. You want to just barely see it relieve the tension just a teeny bit. Then I lock it, and now you're set, and that's going to support the lens there. So another accessory that I've got here with the cage, it does not come with the GH5S cage for some reason, or the S5 cage for some reason, but a top handle. Top handles are very nice and necessary to be able to carry your camera around, something you can pick up your camera with rather than just trying to grab it by the side of the cage. So this tilted top handle you can order, and it will slide right onto pretty much any. But you've got this little kind of dovetail shape receptacle once again, and you slide that right onto that little tray there, and now you can tighten this on once you get it exactly where you want to. And now you've got a top handle on your camera, so if you're picking your camera up, you can grab the top handle and put one hand on the bottom, one hand on the top, and pick it up and carry it without dropping your camera and breaking it. So, all right, so next we're going to start installing power onto this. These cameras, of course, like almost any mirrorless camera or DSLR camera, will have a battery slot. This has got a little door that opens up right here, this little flap that opens up, and then the battery is on the inside there. So if we tilt that up and look at it here, right there is the battery receptacle. That's the door that closes right there. So what we're going to do is we've got, and if you want something that lasts longer than these little teeny batteries, these are fine if you're going on a gimbal or something like that. But if you want power that's going to be lasting like several hours, rather than have to keep swapping these batteries out every like 30 to 40 minutes, however long they last, you'll need something a little bit bigger. Now these type of adapters here, these are called a dummy battery right there. This is specifically built for the S5 Mark II here, this size of battery. I think they're the same on the S5 Mark I as well, the battery size, that goes to a D-tap. So I've got this D-tap in here. I've got some tape on it telling people not to unplug this because they tend to get lost. This is a gold mount battery plate here that you can click the big brick batteries onto these things. It's got the 15mm rod slots on the front there. So I can install this thing here. I can put this on the back, slide that onto the 15mm rod right there. Get that the distance you want, and you can put this wherever you want to. I kind of like it hanging down a little bit like that, just so it's not getting in the way of your screen there. And then I'm going to tighten these up so it's snug. And but that's near the end of the rod, so you got to be a little careful. Make sure that these are fairly snug so that thing doesn't slide off. And on the side of this battery plate, you do have a D-tap insert right there, and I've got this plug. You can sometimes find these battery plates that are dedicated to the dummy battery that you are using. You can find them where it is permanently installed into the gold mount, but then it can only be used for that specific camera though. So this, I bought the D-tap separately. This plug unplugs there. You got the D-tap connector on the side there, and I'm going right on the battery slot on the side here and putting on the D-tap insert right there. I like the tape on it so people don't remove this when they're using this camera, because I have other people. So we have other people that are using this camera here, so it doesn't get lost. And then you're going to have to take the battery here and put it into the battery slot right here. This camera and most of these mirrorless style cameras and DSLR style cameras will have a little, what do you call it, a little opening for the cable, a little cable tray for the cable to go through. So right here on this, hopefully you can see that there's a little cable tray right there that opens up, a little flap that opens up. You can stick the cable tray through that, and now the door will shut completely, and that battery just stays in there now. So with that installed, now I'm ready to put on a gold mount battery here. There's a gold mount battery. Most gold mounts come with these little buttons on it. You can click on them and see how much power you have left. This is 5 LEDs that are lit up, so that battery's all the way full. And it's your preference if you like V-mount or if you like gold pin. I like the gold pin ones. But you put those pins right into those 3 holes there, and you push it over this direction, and it clicks into place. And now that battery is mounted. And I can see on the side here, on this one specifically, I got a little on switch. I want to turn that on. And now it is sending battery. I've got a little light there on the bottom there. You might not be able to see it. That indicates that this plate is powered. It's stuck in the camera. I can give this a quick test and turn the camera on this switch on the top, and it boots up, and it's got power. So we are powered from this battery, which will last a lot longer than those little teeny batteries that you stick inside. If you're going to get one of these batteries, you will need a charger. This is a dual charger here that will take a gold mount battery on both sides, and then you plug it in and turn it on and it charges your batteries. So, all right, so another accessory that we're going to be using is a follow focus. Right now I've got kind of a cheaper follow focus. I want to get a little bit better one. This one's called the Fotga DP500. It's kind of a cheaper one that you can get on Amazon. It works really well. It actually works quite well. It's a little noisy when it slides sometimes, but it is really smooth, and and you can actually, what I like about this is you can take this wheel off and change sides. If you want to change sides on what side it's on, whether it's on the right hand side or the left hand side, you can do that. And then if it's like bumping into the front of the lens, if it's too tight of a system and it's bumping into the lens, you can take this screw off and put it on the other side, and then it will sit back further. So on this, I'm going to be putting on the right hand. I'm going to be putting on camera left side here. A couple things that you need to do here is you need to loosen the slide here. Here's the slide on the bottom, and that's going to loosen it so it goes further out. And then this is the rod tightener right there as you tighten that. And this is very common with most follow focuses. So it's pretty loose right now, so I can put it inside. And I like this because it's got the bottom is open as well. Most follow focuses are like this now. They've kind of figured this out. They're open. It's not a closed circle like this accessory right here, like the lens mount. So you can load this without having to take everything off, which is nice. So I'm going to get the slit all the way out, put the follow focus, and now I'm going to push this down into the rods. It's not quite loose enough, so I got to kind of loosen that the screw on the side here. Loosen that, and now push it down, and now it goes on. So I can tighten that. That tightens it to the rod, and then the tightener underneath is the slide tightener here. So I want to make sure that this is lined up. That's pretty well lined up, and it's now running my focus from the side here. So I'm going to hold that in there. I'm going to hold that in, and then I'm going to reach down underneath with my fingers and tighten that slide there. And you kind of have to envision, like if you're down on the ground looking up at it and you're turning it to the right. So it's going to go that way. So like a normal screw, righty tighty, lefty loosen. And I've got that tightened. It's on there, and now it is running focus for my lens here. And by the way, these are cinema lenses. So cinema lenses typically mean that they've got a couple things. First of all, they've got rings operating each sort of function on the lens, which is if you have focus, zoom, and your f-stop. This one's a prime lens, so it doesn't have the zoom, but it's got you've got your focus ring right there, and you've got your f-stop ring right there. But they have these gears that can be run, that can be accessorized and run. So now somebody running focus can stand off the side of the camera and run focus for the camera operator. And then if you have like a wireless follow focus, you can set up a system on here where you've got a gear on the focus, on the iris, and if you have a zoom, one on the zoom. And with a wireless controller, you can control each one of those focuses, and it will control the motor on each one of those gears there. So another accessory, oftentimes it will come with these follow focuses. This one is just like an old one that I had. It was like some old, what is the M? Red Rock Micro. Man, there's a blast from the past. But this Red Rock Micro will click right into this. This is a pretty standard accessory size. This is called a whip, by the way. So a whip will help. What this does is it absorbs the shock. This is a shock absorber, basically, right here that absorbs like any sort of movement. If the person is over here grabbing it and moving it, it's just going to run the focus, and it's not going to shake the camera. If your hand is closer to the camera, closer you get to the camera, the more you are able to shake that camera while you're running focus. So if you have a whip here, and you get longer whips, you can get whips that are like another, I think 10 inches, like 2 feet long. This is like a 12-inch one though. And you can just run focus like this, and it absorbs the shock, and that keeps it from shaking the camera. So I'm gonna pop that out for right now. But those are pretty cheap too. You can find those for a pretty decent price. All right, we're coming to one of my accessories that is my new favorite here. All right, so this is a Tilta matte box here. This model number specifically is the MBT12, which is a clamp-on matte box. You can accessorize this thing, so you have the 15mm rods like right here at the bottom. It has a little accessory. So if you do need to, if you have a lens that's a different size, you can use this little thing here. This will screw onto the back of your your matte box there like that, and then you can slide it onto the 15mm rods. But this is much better than that. I don't need it because all these lenses that I have have a diameter of 85mm. Like the outer ring diameter of this lens here is 85mm, and you can buy these backs here, this back here, and just simply unscrew this, unscrew that, and you can pull this off, and it has a completely different diameter size. You can get these at like 90mm, 85mm, 80mm to 82mm, a whole bunch of different ring sizes for different standard types of lenses. And this is a 3-phase filter tray here. It's got 3 filters in it, and Tilta does a really good job of building these things, so where they're really nice quality, very solid materials. They don't break very easily. They feel good. They're very light, and they're very durable as well. But this one is meant to match the size, the millimeter size of these Meike lenses. Every single one of these Meike lenses out of the set of 6 primes has an 85mm ring size, with the exception of their 16mm. Their 16mm, I think, has about an 87, and I cannot find a matte box plate that fits the 87. That's an odd size. So what I had to do is to put filters onto that lens, I had to buy, on the 16mm lens, I had to buy a variable ND that just screws directly into the lens, because I couldn't find that abnormal size. And I don't think it exists, actually. I looked all around. It doesn't exist on any professional ones either, so it's weird that Meike did one lens that does not have the clamp-on ability. So this is cool. You don't have to slide it onto that filter tray right there. All you have to do now is connect this directly to the lens, and it has this tightener that makes it snug to the lens, and it hangs off the actual lens, which is really, really cool. And I've been using these in the last year, and I love them. They're so much better than doing the rod adapter. Using the rod on those things can be good if you have a whole bunch of different lenses that are different sizes, and you can adapt those matte boxes. You have to use like different, what's called donut sizes. These little rings that you tuck in there so it doesn't get reflection on the glass. But this blocks out any sort of light being able to come in from the back end, because it's got pretty much this flush ring that fits it and lets no light in at all on that side. So there we go. Really easy to install. You just basically, and these are very affordable. These are around $300. So, which is for matte boxes, for good matte boxes that don't break apart. That's a really good price. And I'm going to screw that on there, and you get the back plates. You can buy the matte box for around $300 and then get these back plates, I think, for about like $70 each if you get a variety of different sizes of lenses that you're going to be using. Well, there we go. So now we can add filters to this. We can add ND filters. We can add our top flag here. So you got a top flag. These matte boxes don't have the bottom flag or the side flags like some matte boxes do. I find that I hardly ever use side flags or the bottom flag. I'm pretty much always using just the top flag. It's pretty standard. So you can screw this onto the top here. They'll call this an eyebrow as well, as another word for it. The eyebrow or top flag, but they call these flags here. And there you go. So now this, and Tilta has this really nice kind of mechanism where it holds it stiff. You can tighten that and loosen that if the tension's not just right. But now we've got that top flag on, and you can block out lens flare with that top flag if you have lights pointing toward the camera. Another cool thing that this matte box comes with are these hard mats here. These hard mats pop right in the front. You have a whole bunch of different of these hard mats here for different lenses. This just blocks a little extra light, tries to avoid letting light bounce around there and reflect onto the glass and onto filters. So these are little extra ones here you can pop into place depending on the lens size. This one is a 50mm lens, so it's got it written right on the front there. It tells you the focal length right there. And now these you can just pop right into there. And that will help block out any extra light and lens flare coming in. If you're trying to get a lot of lens flare, you might want to pop those out. But one thing you want to avoid, like the plague, is light coming from behind and reflecting on the glass. You'll get ghosting images of people standing behind the camera, and you can't get rid of that. Once it's burned in, it's there, and you've screwed up and you have to reshoot. So there we go. We got those hard mats loaded in there, and now we can load a filter if we want to. If you're getting really nice glass, I recommend getting some nicer, like Schneider is like a really nice, what would you call it, filter company, or that does filters, that does really nice glass. And they will have these filters that you can put into them. ND filters, they say that your image is only as good as your glass, and if you get cheap filters, I've just purchased these NEEWER ones, which are a little bit more affordable. I think they're around like 40 bucks, 30 bucks a filter, but I have not noticed any quality loss. I've been trying to look at it with like a fine eye, looking at the images that I'm shooting on this camera, and it's actually done a pretty good job. These NEEWER ones are not too bad, and they're affordable. Comes with a nice hard case to keep each filter in, but you can put up to 3 filters in these trays here. So if you're shooting outside and it's too bright and you need to tone down the amount of light coming in, if you're in bright sunlight, you might need to use like a 0.9 or 1.2. For every 0.3, that's 1 stop of light that it cuts out. It cuts the light amount coming in half. So a 1.2 filter is basically 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 0.3 times 4. That's 1.2, and that cuts out 4 stops. So that's going to be a lot of light loss there. But if you're out in the bright sunlight, you may need it. So, and these NEEWER ones you can find on Amazon as well. But yeah, these filters, you can loosen them on the side here and pull out a filter tray. You got these little screws that tighten the filters in. You don't want to over tighten them when you put them back in. But as far as the filter tray is concerned, you got these little notches that lift up here. You don't unscrew that screw there. You grab the screw and you lift it up. And then the tray. See, if you got really expensive glass in this, you need like a camera assistant to help this. And then when you pull this out, it falls into place. And then you let go, and that little spring-loaded mechanism holds that glass into place. This has some like little dust marks on it that you got. You would need a microfiber cloth to clean that off. Drop that in, or some air to blow on it. There we go. And you don't want to use your mouth to blow on there. Now I've got a tray installed there. I've got a filter installed in the tray now, and I have 2 empty trays. If you want to do other sort of trays and need to add more ND or an effect filter like a Pro Mist filter or something else, or like a grad filter, you can insert those filters in the top there. So the only thing that I found with this Tilta matte box here is that these filters, none of these trays will rotate. Sometimes if you put a circular polarizer in there and you're trying to cut down on reflection, those things need to rotate in order to get the best reflection, to get the best cut down on reflection there. If you're shooting like the sky and you're trying to bring back the blue to the sky in a circular polarizer, or reflection on a wider or on glass, they need to rotate. So that can be an issue with these things, is you won't be able to use a circular polarizer in there and rotate it at all. So yeah, these stay upright. They don't rotate. And then on some of the better matte boxes, they usually have at least 1 rotating tray that you can put in which you can put a circular polarizer. So, okay, so coming down to some of the final accessories, we've got pretty much everything we need on here. If you're shooting on outside and you're shooting, or even indoor, and you're shooting on this little teeny screen right here, that can be a problem. It does have an eyepiece, but the eyepiece is like right here. It's hard to get your face like in the middle and really look through that eyepiece if you're trying to block out light. And so a good camera operator usually likes to have an eyepiece that they can just have all the light dedicated to hitting their eye, and no peripheral, what would you call it, gunk kind of coming into their eyes and contaminating what they are seeing. So a lot of cinematographers like a good electronic viewfinder put onto the camera. If you're shooting on film, if you're shooting on like motion picture film, it's not an electric viewfinder. It's just a regular optical viewfinder that the light is literally coming through the camera, coming through your eyepiece through reflected light and hitting your eye. So what you're seeing is the actual light coming through the camera and hitting your eye, rather than an electronic screen here. But EFVs are very, very popular these days. This is kind of a little bit more of an affordable one. When I say affordable, they're around like 500 bucks. If you go ahead and look up EFV professional ones. They get on upwards of like $2,000 to like $10,000 sometimes. It's insane how expensive an electronic viewfinder can get. But if you're a professional cinematographer or camera operator, you want like the clarity. You want a perfectly clear image coming through, as high quality as possible. But this one is actually pretty decent. This is a 4K monitor here. It is a Portkeys 4K electronic viewfinder. It is capable of having an HDMI input. Once again, a maximum resolution 4K and 30 frames per second progressive scan is what it will send into this. So this is, for the price, this is a really decent monitor. But if you're going to put this monitor on, you need to have something to connect it with. And that's going to be something like this little articulating arm. They have some of these, probably the more expensive ones are from Wooden Camera, and then they have some that are made from Noga. Noga is like a really good kind of medium quality brand. And then SmallRig makes kind of a more affordable brand. I hate to say it's not as good quality. When you feel these things and you feel a Noga versus a Wooden Camera, you can definitely feel a little bit of a kind of a chintzy difference between these. And the tightening mechanisms on the Noga is a lot better in my opinion. But this one does just fine, especially for an accessory that's just as light as this Portkeys electronic viewfinder. What I usually do when I install these things is I will, and once again, this is one by SmallRig, I will get this thing and I will straighten out the entire system. An articulating arm will basically let you bend these things in almost any direction that you want to get your accessory aimed any direction that you want, and then you can tighten it down and it tightens the entire system. So nothing rotates, because you have these screws that rotate, you have these sleeves that rotate, and you have the arm itself that rotates, and it will lock the entire system. So I usually straighten the whole thing out so these screws are kind of going up and down, and then I will tighten this and get it. These things you can monster snug a little bit more without making them impossible to loosen. In fact, monster snug is kind of better on these things than they are just snug, because then it can get moved around quite easily if you don't have it monster snug. This system is made to do that. So, all right, so I've got these 1/4" screws on the bottom here of the Portkeys. I'm going to put it right in the center one, and you got to be careful so you don't drop these things. I'm going to screw that into the bottom there, and I'm going to tighten this little wheel on the bottom that kind of pressurizes against the monitor so it doesn't come loose. And now I'm going to find a spot that I can put this on my cage. And I found that I've kind of like it. There's like a little 1/4" screw right there that puts this kind of on an angle and takes it away from the camera on an angle. So I like that one right there for this specific setup. So I'm going to screw that in and then tighten that wheel down so it pressurizes against the cage. And now you can basically loosen this and get the eyepiece, the electronic viewfinder, in whatever position that you want it to. And if you move these sleeves, if you can't get it to go down, you got these little notches right here that you got to rotate in the direction that you want to bend it, get it right there, and now it will lower like that. And let's say I want my eyepiece right about there on the operator side. Tighten that down, and I've got that right where I want it. So it does have this little eye cover here. So people use, on the professional electronic viewfinders, people will bring their own little eyepieces here that they Velcro on, connect onto it, so they can push their face against it all day, and it soaks up the oils and gets it dirty. But it's a disposable one. And this here, it will open up the viewfinder, and you can actually, it's got a little Velcro sticky on the bottom. You can do that to keep it out of your eye. And then you have this diopter to focus this thing to your eye. What I find you have to do is you get your eye up to it, you get it focused on your eye, and once that's in focus, then you put your eyepiece on. And because that now when you try to rotate it, it'll pull the Velcro off on the bottom there, which is not a big issue. But anyway, all right, so we've got that connected. So another couple things that we need on here is we need to send power to this device here, and we also need to send an HDMI cord that comes from the camera to this device so we can look through our electronic viewfinder. The Portkeys device, the electronic viewfinder, does come with a D-tap power supply here. So this will connect into, and I've got an extra D-tap on my battery here. So right on the top of my battery, I've got another D-tap slot that opens up right here on the top. So I'm going to plug that in to that little power slot. And you can tell which way it goes because the D-tap has a little D shape. So you got to kind of look at it and see which way the D shape goes and then plug that in rather than try to force it in the wrong direction. And now I can take my power from the battery here and take it to the back of the Portkey viewfinder right there. There's a little battery port. So you can find a way of kind of like maybe gathering up this cable so it's not getting tangled up or it's couching onto things. I'm going to kind of wrap it around the bottom a couple times here to take up the extra slack. And I'm going to bring it up and plug it right into the Portkeys monitor right there. And this, it's basically like a LEMO pin. So you got to kind of rotate it, find where it clicks into place, and lightly pressurize it to plug it in. And it has a little sleeve release here. You pull the sleeve back and then it pops out. So you have to grab onto that sleeve right here and pull it backwards to get that to release. And now it's locked into place. It's not going to lock into place until you grab that sleeve and pull that sleeve out, and then it will pop off. So you've got that in. Now, one other thing that I want to bring up here is this HDMI. So first of all, I've got this little, I think they call it the M3 tray that plugs onto the side, and you can buy these separately from the box as well, and screw them into the side right here, which connect an HDMI. This thing came with the cage here, and what it does is that it clamps down on the HDMI cable and on the USB 3 cable. So the USB 3 cable is going to go to a hard drive. We'll show that next. But it clamps down on that and makes this snug. You have to take a little screw here and screw it to the side here, and it will tighten it up. So these cables will not have play in them. So you barely want to tighten that, so it's just a little bit snug on those cables so they don't wiggle and ruin your HDMI port. But I have this little extra HDMI cable here that I bought from Tilta, this little extension that plugs in, and then it has a little 1/4-inch screw that you can screw it onto wherever you want to on the cage. And now I have a port on the bottom from my HDMI, and that way you can plug in and out of this one without destroying the port on your cameras. Unfortunately, that's the way some of these cameras are with HDMI ports. HDMI is not the best interface in my opinion, but then you have to get another little, I like these little coiled HDMI cables here. Make sure that you get one that's 4K supported. We're going to plug that in to the cable there. And now I'm going to plug that into the HDMI port on my electronic viewfinder. I'm going to stretch that out a little bit so it's not pulling on the HDMI port here. Plug that in. And then I can get my viewfinder where I want it. And now I should have power. I'm going to turn this on, and you have to turn on the Portkeys, which is powered by the D-tap on the battery, and everything is basically powered by this battery on the back now. And I can't see anything in there because it is completely black because I have a 1.2 ND in the tray. So I'm going to set that out of there, get that out of there. And now as you look in there, I don't know if you can see that, but there is light coming through there, the same as the image on there. So right now I'm just focused on a white wall, which is super exciting. There we go. There we go. So now I am focused on the white wall, and you can see the white wall in the electronic viewfinder as well. And there we go. So we are set up and ready to go. So we are nearly set up and ready to go. So the last thing I want to go over, I'm just going to shut this stuff off. I don't need it on right now. So the final thing I want to go over is recording onto media here. And what I've got here are these Samsung T7s, and you got T5s as well. T5s are a bit more expensive. I found that the T7, I haven't had problems with using this camera with the T7. The T7 seems to work just fine on this specific camera. But what I've got is I've got an accessory cable, or I've got a cable coming from one side, which is I've got the USB-C plugged in on this side, right there. And the little tray is holding that as well, as kind of pinching it to hold it so it doesn't get bent or ruin the port. And this cable runs over to the other side of the camera here, where I have added this little Tilta accessory tray that is an SD card holder. So a solid state drive holder, an SSD card holder, I should say, not an SD card. These are SSDs. The SD cards are the smaller ones. It can record on those, but it can't record up to 6K. It can record. It will only record up to some sort of AVC codec, I believe. I can't remember. I'll have to look that up. But these ones here, I don't even know because I shoot on a ProRes all the time on these cards. I don't even use the AVC version. You probably do have to use that footage if you want to go higher frame rate. But with this, I believe it shoots up to 48 frames, or is it 60 frames per second on these cards in 6K, and it shoots also in ProRes up to ProRes HQ on these cards, which is amazing. So what's cool about this is it's got a little pinch tray right here, once again, for the USB-C cable there. So you can loosen that and kind of get this in the area that you need. It has this little filter tray that's spring loaded. You lift that up, you put your hard drive in there. Oops, I've got it backwards. There's the slot right there. So I want the USB-C slot going forward. I'm going to slide that into place, get that cable lined up, plug that in, get that all the way plugged in. Then I can tighten this so it doesn't get wiggled or ruin the port on my hard drive. And this camera will shoot directly to this solid state card, which is great. One of the other cameras that does that is the Blackmagic camera. That was one of the original cameras that did that. And Panasonic has jumped on board with these external cards, and it works really, really well. So there we go. All right, well, that is our setup. That's our rig for our Lumix S5 Mark II S or X, S2X. I can never remember the name for that because it's a long, wordy, weird name. So anyway, but this is a great camera, full frame camera, full frame lens, up to 6K, and you can shoot up to ProRes 422 HQ, which is I believe that's like 16-bit color, and the and it will also shoot in ProRes 422, which is 10-bit color, which is kind of the base minimum for cinema. And it also shoots internally to cars. I believe it shoots at an 8-bit flavor if you want to get the file size smaller in these cameras. But if you're shooting kind of for cinema, you want at least 10-bit color. And the ProRes 422 does that. And the ProRes 422 HQ even shoots, I believe, up to 16-bit color, which is really high color depth. Anyway, all right, so that's it for this episode, just showing you kind of the rig and the accessories that I use with this camera. It's been a great camera. I've been using it for about a year, and I've been very impressed with it. I've really loved its features. Nice thing about the full frame, if you want to use the entire sensor on the full frame rather than just like, it would be a full frame crop, basically, that you're shooting in like a 1.89 to 1 aspect ratio. But you can put anamorphics on these things, and it will stretch across the entire sensor and utilize that entire sensor with the anamorphic lens. And yeah, and it's great quality. So yeah, the next episode I'm going to be going over the menu system in this camera and how to set this camera up and get it ready for cinema. Cool. Well, thanks for watching ShinFet, and if you have any comments or questions, post them below and I will actively ignore them. Just kidding. I love responding. So